So you ready, Curtis?
Ready to go.
There you go. Hello once again to the third episode of Learning from Leaders. Today I have my guest, Curtis, who is going to talk to us about what it means to be a good leader and some of the challenges that they face. He's the co-founder of a company called Leadership in Focus. Curtis, welcome.
Thanks, Emo. It's great to be on. So happy to be here. I'm excited that we've chatted about this, and so excited that you launched this, and excited to be a part of it. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, Curtis. Now, I usually start out with this with all my guests, and I ask the question, how did we meet?
Yeah, the power of LinkedIn. I think ironically, digital media and LinkedIn. You had posted something that just really resonated with me, and I had reached out to you locally in Halifax, and very shortly after that, we were sitting in the Italian market. I think a half an hour meeting turned into a 2 hour discussion, and realized that we were very aligned on values and the way we work. So yeah, that was probably in 2018, if I remember correctly. So it was
Yes,
a little while ago.
I remember that. It was the one in Halifax. There was a Dollarama next door or something.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the Italian market, it's a hidden gem. Shout out to those to the local business there, but it's a good spot.
Excellent. So today we're going to talk about something that is near and dear to both of us, and that's talking about leadership and some of the challenges that they face. So before we go in, I mean, what does leadership mean to you? And maybe we'll start with that, and then I'll ask a couple of questions, and then we'll go with that.
Yeah, I mean, leadership to me, I always go back to leader versus manager, right? And I think that we can all probably feel the difference in what that means. So for me, a leader is committed to growing people, versus a manager is committed to a process, to managing a process, managing, the tasks, so to speak. Um, so leadership is everything, right? How do we best support and empower people to be their authentic selves? How do we provide a safe environment where we get the most out of people? So, I always say, especially from a professional capacity, but also, in coaching sports and in other areas of my life, even being a parent, I think the growth of individuals is often, the glass ceiling is the capacity of the leader's mindset. So leadership is very important, for culturally and both personally. It's something that I've been, I geek out about leadership, and I follow different leaders, and it can make or break an organization. I think it's such an important topic, and I just think we're scratching the surface, and we're seeing a change in what leaders can be. And we're in an interesting time right now for that as well.
If you're to talk about one or two differences between a leader and a manager, what would that be? I know they could both be the same, and many
Mhm.
times they are, but what are fundamental differences between those styles of just a pure leader and a pure manager?
Yeah, and to your point, like, oftentimes a leader has to manage, and then a manager in some capacities is often leading in some way, shape, or form. But the functionality of a leader versus a manager, if I think about the core differences, I think a leader has the ability to elevate and see the big picture. So always thinking about all the different pieces of the puzzle and really has a clear vision. Um, the other thing, when I think back of the best leaders that I've had, or for the ones that you study, they're not always the smartest people in the room. The ego is checked. They check the ego at the door.
Yes.
Uh, they surround themselves with very smart people, and then they get out of their way, right? A good leader sets people up, is there to remove barriers when people fall into difficulty or they have problems, or they might be more of a mentor, right? If I think of a leader, I think more of a mentor type style, where it's how can I set you up for success? What can I do to help you? Versus a manager, and again, nothing negative about it, but a manager is really about, in my opinion, task oriented, measuring KPIs versus measuring people, right?
Right.
Uh, have we got this done today? Did we hit a target? You think about a project or a project manager, pure project management, it's all about milestones and targets to get something done. Where in my opinion, leaders are are leading people, not projects.
Good answer. So now I know with the changing environment we're in, with work from home and just everything that has happened in the last couple of years, how do you see the role of management and leadership changing to respond to the environment we're in today compared to what we had a few years back?
Yeah, so this is a topic near and dear to my heart, and one of the companies that I work with, Seasoned Pros, we talk about this a lot, right? How, the flexibility of the workforce and the changing dynamics of the workforce. I think um, leaders have to be outcome driven. Time as a management tool or measuring, if people are at their desks, on time and how many hours they're working in a week, with the changing environments and the way that people want to work, leaders who have set a clear vision and who understand what success means like from the individual and is there sort of working with them alongside of them, checking in. It's really about connecting with them. And they might not have the physical ability to connect. So you've got to find a way to connect with people at different, at different stages, different personalities and really connect to see how do I make sure that they understand how their piece of the pie fits right into the larger picture. And then how do I make sure that everyone's very clear on what success looks like from the role and then get out of the way, right? We got to get out of the way and let them do the micromanagement style in today's environment just won't work. And people just don't respond well to it because they want more flexibility. And we're working virtually and we're not necessarily at our desks or in an office 24/7 or, 8 to 5, whatever the hours might be. So, I think leaders today are very, very more so, they're balanced. They understand that they're going to get the most out of people when they have a better understanding of their lives, right? So flexible to family, flexible to what might be going on external to work, realizing that work isn't everything, right? We have lives and people show up at their best when they feel supported and they feel safe and they feel like they're, they understand their purpose within an organization. So leaders set the outcome, set the vision, and then really check in and be a person, right? Be a human, connect at a human level and really like what makes them tick? How can I help you versus why isn't this done, right?
Right.
And there's multiple examples of that where we see the difference. If you go into a performance review or you're going into a meeting with your boss and they're saying, why haven't you hit these KPIs or why didn't we hit these metrics, versus a leadership conversation might be like, you know what, I've noticed that you're not yourself lately. Your performance is tailing. Is there anything going on? What's going on? Anything that, can you help me understand what might be going on? And then get to the root of it. So I think it's a very different dialogue that happens between a pure leader and a manager when it comes to that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And actually, funny enough, the first episode I did in this series was for my manager before, and he did exactly what you talked about. It was more about how was Emo doing and how was Emo's life outside of work. And because he was concerned about that, then I gave 110% to the work because he was concerned about me first before the work, right? So yes, that
Well,
makes sense.
yeah, and I have so many different, I remember feeling that way from the feeling that you get when people care, right? And it's amazing what you can get out of someone when they feel like they're appreciated and valued and you really do care about them as a human being, not just as a number or as an employee or someone that's, helping them achieve something, right? And the I've had, we've probably had the opposite where the manager might take all your ideas or they feel like you're a route to their success, right? It's a very
Right.
different feeling than having somebody that's like, I always say like the best thing possible for me anytime I was managing people was to see them succeed, to get them if they could take my job or they could get promoted, that was a good thing. I was never worried about job security as a leader, right? You're always supporting and watching people grow versus sort of holding that sort of scarce mindset of, I better not be too good to this person or they might take my job, right?
Right. Well, I think that's the fun part for me about owning a company and doing a lot of things with entrepreneurs. I want them to be way more successful than I am, because the
Mhm.
more successful they are, the more successful I am, right? And so everything I do is to make them bigger, better, faster, and bolder than I am. And it's a fun space to be in, as opposed to going, you know what, if I make them too fast, they'll overtake me and I'll be sunk. If I make them grow too fast, they will pull me up faster. Yeah, so it's just a different mindset, but it's a fun place to be in where you're not competing with anyone. You're just helping everybody grow, right? So that's a great
Yeah,
place to be.
it's so true. You mentioned competition, and I always say, I preach, collaboration over competition any day. I think that there's one thing that we should be doing more of is just figuring out how to grow the pie, how to grow the market, how to grow the economy, how to grow the region, especially based in Atlantic Canada. There's not enough room for, a scarce mindset or to hold on to what's yours. We got to
Right.
think of ourselves as growing this region, growing the pie, giving back. And, you're very good at that, by the way. I mean, I remember
Oh,
you've
thank you.
nudged me along the way and a few times, when I've got the imposter syndrome, or maybe I was double thinking about doing something, you'd be quick to say, just try it. What's the worst that can happen? So yeah, it's great to have, people like you in your corner for sure.
Well, thank you, Curtis. I feel the same about you. And that was when you were saying that, there was something that came to my mind, and I guess you'll help me say it best. Is it the sum of the parts is greater than the, or how does that go? Is it the sum of the parts is greater than the whole, or the whole is greater than the parts?
Absolutely.
How does
Yeah.
that go?
Some of the parts are greater than the whole, right? Like, so how do we make sure that we're all working together and aligned on goal? And there's no reason, Jeff Bezos said it best. It's just be so externally focused on providing value to your customer and to the market that you're not worried about the competition. You focus on the external market and you look at what they're doing. And, as a leader, I think that's important, right? There's so many distractions, and, you can start to really worry about your competition, or, maybe the person next to you, if you're in an organization and you're worried about competing for a role or anything like that, my I could hear the voice in my head to say, my father always used to say to me, anytime that you're thinking about somebody else, right? If you're worried about what they're making or their job, or you should have their job, he'd say, put a mirror up on both sides of you and in front of you, and that's who you have to worry about, right? So focus on you, and then really providing value to the customer, and then how can everybody else around you make that happen?
Those are wise words. Now, Curtis, I know that being a leader or managing people, which you've done both, and you do both probably simultaneously sometimes, what kind of challenges have you faced, and how did you solve them, or how did you deal with them, so we could help people who are listening do the same?
Yeah, I mean, learning through mistakes, right?
Right.
Um, I think there's a few things that pop into mind. One is that really trying learning what a manager should and shouldn't be doing as a leader. So, maybe jumping in and trying to do everything, right? And I think about this, I default to parenting, because I have an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old. And
Right.
I just think about, you want to make the world as easy as possible for them,
Yes.
but that's not always the best way to help them grow, right?
True.
So how do you provide an environment where they're safe and they're secure, but they still have an opportunity to fail and learn and grow, and they're going to make mistakes on their own, right? You can't do everything for them. The easy path is never always the best path, right? It doesn't exist. So I think the hardest part is, from a manager's perspective, is understanding that you've got to allow people in your care, or people that report into you, the opportunity to try and to fail and provide them with that safe environment and then manage the risk, right? So they can't, in some cases, I might have been too open and not provided enough structure or boundaries. So for example, when I was running one of the companies that I was with, and the staff had some trouble making decisions. And I was saying, well, no, that's your role. Just make the decision. But not realizing that, it was my first time being an entrepreneur, first time having full control over the budget, not understanding that that mistake could be very, very costly, right? So learning about putting boundaries in place. Maybe you've got to say, look, if it's a $250 decision or it's a $500 decision, you've got the authority and the ability to make that on your own. And whatever happens, we'll learn from it. Beyond that, you can, maybe it's come to me, and maybe that's depending on the scope of the company, that could be up to $1 million. But what's the sandbox that the person can play in safe and free and like flex them, and then so that you can always come in and then reflect with them, right? What did you learn from that? Okay, we made a mistake. What do we do now? And I think that if people have the ability to fail and learn and grow from that, you're going to get so much more out of them. I think about coaching sports a lot, and there's often the analogy if somebody's in a slump, right? In baseball or hockey, they're overthinking, or they're holding their stick too tight, or their coach might be on them and too much. There's too much pressure. But all of a sudden, if they go, wait, the team's got my back, the coach has my back, the fans have my back, I'm going to relax and just go out and be me. All of a sudden they're lighting it up. They're doing well again, right? So how do we provide that safe, flexible environment to try, fail, reflect, and then improve on it?
True. Now, I know that in quite a number of environments, you have scenarios whereby, again, because of people's fear of risk, they tend to want to just follow some cookie cutter way of doing things, where creativity from the members of the team is kind of stifled. And I find that in the business that we're in, and many other businesses, creativity and allowing people to be creative and be creative within the sandbox, like you spoke about, is where greatness comes from. You get the best ideas when you let people free think. You get the best ideas when people go, well, you know what, we could bring this up. It may work or it may not work, but at least we tried. And they understand that they're appreciated for coming up with the idea. I think those kind of environments thrive faster than the ones where somebody comes in and goes, here's this, almost military style, you must do it this way because we've done it this way since 19 tickety whatever, and nothing else will change. Because in the end, what they just get is the same result over and over and over again. Now, in some places, that might be acceptable because there's some places where you need certain things to just work the same way over and over again. But for the most part,
Right.
creativity, I believe, is what differentiates us. And creativity is what makes us soar to where we're supposed to go to. Right?
Yeah, and it makes me think of something there. You hit on something, it's how do we get the best of both, right? And as leaders, if we provide the environment for creativity, but we let the market or the customer sort of give us feedback on whether or not it might be good. So as an example, if you're going to make you're going to launch something, a new product, let's say as an example, you're going to launch a widget. You don't want to put full bore all of your things behind it, millions and millions of dollars without testing it. So as a leader, it's like, how can you create an environment where we might be able to pilot this? We might be able to test it with our best customers, right? How can we make sure that, hey, we're going to get some feedback either way, limit the risk, take a small market, take your customers that love you the most and get some feedback and try it and then see what comes back from it. That process in itself, by allowing people to go through that, it just fuels that creativity and learning, and you're going to get a lot from it as an organization. So if you, as a leader, you can create those little wins along the way and let people flex their creativity, but without the risk, without the major risk, right? We're not going to go all in on something if we don't know anything about it, but but we also don't want to just go with the ideas of the manager or just the ideas of, because you're going to lose the passion of the employees, of especially people that are creative, right? You said something there, you put somebody in an environment where everything that they do is told to them, you're going to lose them very fast, right? And there's some people that want to operate that way. And that's okay. But anybody that's sort of interested in becoming a leader or innovative or creative, and if you take that away from them, you're going to watch the passion shift very quickly.
True. So the approach you talked about, if we were to put some kind of a name to it, will that be kind of like an agile approach to pushing out widgets, so to speak? Will that
Yeah,
work?
I think it's agile, the flexibility. Um, that I know this might be overused, but that whole idea of fail fast and learn, right? Test it, don't, because oftentimes, we overthink. I'm definitely guilty of that, right? We're gonna overanalyze and we're gonna figure out the best way and we're gonna find the best launch plan and we don't do it. But if you can find a way to do it in a smaller capacity and get some feedback and then execute something and then, be agile enough, be flexible enough to do it and then learn and then, okay, let's go again, with a better alternative, or maybe we've improved a little bit. We're gonna suck at everything the first time around.
100%.
I think the best leaders put people in an opportunity to expand themselves without
Yes.
pushing too much, without bursting them, without putting them in an overwhelming situation. So how do we, it's a really fine line to want to see people expand and grow, but then how do we do that without putting too much pressure on them where they feel overwhelmed?
Excellent. Now, Curtis, I know that quite a number of my followers or subscribers are entrepreneurs or people who are trying to go into some leadership type position. What kind of advice will you give them in terms of where they could go to build up their leadership skills? Like, is it an online thing? Is it a course? What kind of advice will you give to them? Imagine I was someone who was just coming um, into my career and I go, you know what, I feel like I want to go into this leadership role. What kind of advice will you give them?
Yeah, I think one thing for sure that we should think about is, um, I think that it's important to understand that you can be a leader at anywhere in the organization. I think a leadership is a mindset.
Right,
So I think that, leaders empowering other leaders, or you understanding that you don't have to have a title to be a leader. A title doesn't earn you respect, right? You
right,
might be given a leadership position and still not be a leader. So a leader can be anybody within the organization. So it doesn't matter if you're a junior employee, a student, you can be a leader in your own capacity. So I think that's an important distinction. Um, and the other thing, is to fuel that is to have discussions with folks like pick up, don't be afraid to reach out to myself, find some people that have some career war wounds and who have, made mistakes and, learn from others, right? I think there's a quote that says, the wise people learn from the mistakes of others. Um, I hopefully have made enough mistakes in my career that I can pass along and make it a little easier for the next person down the line. So, I think it's connecting with people and not being afraid to reach out. And there's enough of us around that would be glad to support and help. A little shameless plug here. I've co-founded a company called Leadership in Focus. That was the whole why behind that, was to provide a community for leaders to grow and learn together. So it's a free community where there's some very good online resources. There's some downloadable leadership journals and a 90-day leadership guide, and there's all kinds of content there around leadership and some videos of our favorite leaders and things like that. So that's at leadershipinfocus.ca. That was a passion project with myself and co-founder Curtis Graham out of Toronto. So, there are resources like that. And I think if you are thinking about it and you have a passion, you're already one step ahead. Now it's just lean in. There's all kinds of resources out there. Find some people on whether it's podcasting, whether it's maybe YouTube channels like this one. find some folks that resonate with you and spend some time learning and seeing their approach and listening to different perspectives. The greatest leaders on the planet, I think, have this wonderful word called perspective. They have the ability to see things from multiple angles and, take things from different perspectives, whether it's cultural differences or whether it's just different scenarios. And, some of that comes with time and wisdom,
Yes, true.
but you can learn a lot from other people's perspectives. So, open your mind, get as much perspective as possible, get different styles of leadership. There are all kinds of different styles. Choose your own style that fits for you. You have to be you. You can't be somebody else. But yeah, but don't be afraid to, reach out and continue to learn.
Excellent. Well, Curtis, I know you have another company. I think we have probably about 3 or so more minutes, but it would be great if we could talk about that. And also, you're going to send me the links to all your online resources, correct?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I will. I'll send the links and yeah, I mean, I'm working with a company called Season Pros right now. Huge why. I'm a why guy. People will say that. The huge why for me is often one of the biggest challenges for growth is access to the right people at the right time. And especially within Atlantic Canada, we tend to not make the hire, not have the budget that we require. So Season Pros helps people get access to seasoned professionals, maybe on a fractional or project basis, but it's, talent on demand. So regardless of the problem you're trying to solve, there are folks that have been there, done that, and can connect. So that's near and dear to my heart right now. And then, of course, I've got Leadership in Focus, which I mentioned, and then the core company that's been around for, it was my father's company, and now I've taken it over. It's Action Consulting Group. Multiple things have run through there, but that's basically front end, leadership, consulting, strategic planning, and sales and marketing support, mostly for small and medium-sized businesses. So try to take what I've learned in the corporate world and the entrepreneurial ring, merge it together to say, how can we best support small and medium-sized businesses through whatever challenges that they're facing?
Right. And funny enough, small to medium businesses are the heartbeat of the Maritimes, if we're going to be honest.
Sure. Yeah, I think I read a stat recently. It's over 90% of businesses would be
Wow.
considered SMEs. So it really is that's what fuels the economy and fuels our region.
Excellent. Well, Curtis, thank you very much for coming here to share some wisdom on leadership. I know that just based on what you do and what I do, that we're going to do more of this. And I think we're going to have another Italian market sit down to figure out what we want to do next. Um, at the end of the day, what we have in common is we're trying to help people solve problems, whatever those problems are. Usually problems to do with business or productivity or personal development. So again, thank you very much for coming in. And I'm going to post the link so that people can have access to your information and learn from that.
Yeah,
So
that's great. Well, thank you very much for having me. It's great, and I'd be glad to come back on whenever the invite's there. So appreciate it, Emo.
thank you very much. Well, you have yourself a fine week and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, sounds good. Cheers, man.
Take care. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.